Hi, just before we start the questions from the past exam, I wanted to show you the subject assessment guidelines for information technology from the IEB, and just to show you that this is what they say they will put in your theory paper. You can see that the data and information management and solution development section at the end of the paper is 50 marks out of 150. That's a lot, a third of the paper. Now that would be stuff like database, SQL questions, object-oriented programming, class diagrams, trace tables, algorithms. I'm not sure if truth tables and Boolean logic fit into this, but yeah, probably does. But yeah, so that's why it is important to revise your algorithms, class diagrams, trace tables, and OOP stuff before this theory exam. Let's read question 7. The library is now going to use an object-oriented programming solution rather than a database. Book objects will be instantiated and stored in an array of book objects named bookr. Each object will have the following properties that should not be accessible from outside the book class: book ID, integer, title, string, genre, string, times borrowed, integer. Now let's just think the genre is book ID and title makes sense, but the genre, it's the type of book, like a romance or a thriller or maybe a non-fiction book, etc. Then times borrowed, that would be how many times has this book been borrowed from the library. Okay, we're going to need that further down the line. Complete the blank class diagram below to represent the book class. You should use the fields shown above. The book class will need the following: accessor methods for the genre and time borrowed, mutator for the title field. The mutator method should accept a string parameter t, parameterized constructor method that will accept 4 parameters b, t, g, and tb, which correlate to the fields defined above, and a toString method that will display all the fields of a book object, and they give you a space to work in. I've made a word diagram here, a diagram in my Word. So I'm going to be working here. So first you always put the class name in the first block. Next, you put all the fields. So we're going to go minus book ID colon integer. Minus, don't forget the minus, because they must not be accessible from outside the class. Minus genre, minus means private, you know that in Java. Okay, minus times borrowed colon integer. So that's exactly what your class diagram must look like. If you look at the solution, it looks a little bit different because this is pre-20. Okay, so you see it, they had a different way of doing it then. This, how I'm doing it, is the right way for now, and I will put the current class diagrams document in the comments under the YouTube. So look for it there, exactly how you need to do class diagrams. The third block is for the methods. Plus is for a public method. So we want a constructor first, and usually a constructor would be called book because the class is called book, but we're going to call it constructor, because that's the way it has to be done now. And first we have B for book, ID, it's an integer, comma. C for the title, it's a string, comma. G for the genre, colon, it's also a string, comma. And TB for the times borrowed, and colon, and that's an integer. So we have all our parameters in the brackets, just as it said. You see that was listed third, but I know the constructor must go at the top of the methods. Then we can do our accessor methods now for genre and times borrowed. So accessors are always get. So get genre, bracket, bracket. Now genre is a string, so this method must return a string, so I go colon string. Then plus get times borrowed, bracket, bracket, colon, and this one is an integer, It returns an integer. Now we're going to do our mutator for the title field. Mutators are set methods. Set, title, note the camel case. This one's got a parameter, key, colon, string. Close the brackets. Please note, I do not put colon void. It is a void method. Just leave the rest of the line blank, okay? And then plus to string, bracket, bracket, colon, string. This method returns a string. And there's your class diagram done. 10 marks. Okay, please learn how they're done. This is easy marks. Okay, there are a few questions here. What is an algorithm? Oh yes, do read 7.2. Read the beginning. The librarian would like to know which genre is the most popular. This will be worked out based on the number of times a book is borrowed. Your assistant has been required to help write an algorithm to answer her question. Now, I did not like this question, because how can you say that one book's been borrowed a certain number of times, therefore that genre is the most popular? Because that genre is going to occur many times in your array. So this should have been using a nested loop or some other complicated way. So this was the algorithm in the next question is only 6 marks, which tells you they're not going that way. But this question was iffy. Anyway, it should have said which title is the most popular, in my opinion. Anyway, what is an algorithm? Let's look at the marks, the memo. It's a series of steps to solve a problem. They make a note here. This is not about representing, just the definition of what it is. I don't know if a series of steps to solve a problem would be enough. I would say a little bit more. It is an English description of what a program must do. It does not contain the syntax of the language. It does not contain any particular language's code. Okay. Explain why an algorithm can be used to code programs in any programming language. What do they say? Because an algorithm is written in pseudocode that can be translated into any programming language for implementation. Okay, it's basically an English description of what your programmers do. It is not written in any particular language. The programmer takes the algorithm and he goes or she programs the code. Okay, next question. The algorithm to work out the most popular genre will form part of the book array class. The book array class is used to instantiate an array of book objects and to undertake other tasks. The array named bookAr is a field of the class and is declared together with an integer field called size to record the number of elements in the array. Now we are used to working this way, so you already know how to do this. How that is, well, that's familiar. But now this is what they want. They've got a partial algorithm for a type method called popular genre, is shown below. You're required to complete the algorithm in the space provided. The book array begins at index 0, and we're used to that. Leave that there. I'm going to scroll down. I've made a little space here where I'm going to go and write my code. So I've put what they've got there. I've put it in here. So the method is called popular genre, colon, and it returns a string. Now they've declared 2 variables which they want you to use. Now you've got to figure out what these 2 variables, what are they there for? Well, you're working out which is the most popular genre. So popular, that's like the place where you're going to store the maximum amount of times borrowed. You're going to look through the array, see times borrowed, and check where's the biggest times borrowed number as you go through all the books. So I'm going to just put a little comment here. Just put max times borrowed. You could just to help yourself. Max times borrowed. That's what that's for me in my mind. That's what I know popular is for. Position is the place in the array where that happens. Which book is the one with the max times borrowed? Okay. So first of all, we need to put size, and you can make an arrow with a less than and 2 dashes in Word. Anyway, just by the by. So size, we're going to set it equal to the number of elements or cells in bookAr. All right. And then we want to set popular equal to book R square bracket 0. Remember, we're working with an array, so we're allowed to use this square bracket 0. And then we've got a method called get times borrowed, so let's use it. Get times borrowed. Now you're going to tell me, well, this is pseudocode. How can you use this construct? Because that looks a lot like Java. Yes, it does. But how else are you going to describe it? Maybe if you didn't want to use total Java, you could say, get the number of times borrowed from book array square bracket 0. I'm sure that would be accepted too. Just don't put a semicolon on the end, okay? That is Java. Okay, then we're going to do our for loop. We'll use the loop variable I. Oops, now Word loves putting capital I's there. You've got to keep going Control Z until you get rid of the capital. So for loop I we're going to go from 1 to size -1. Because we've already looked at book array 0. We've looked at the first cell, that get times borrowed from the first cell in the array. We're going to look from position 1 all the way to the end of the array and keep checking if the next one is bigger than popular. So if book array square bracket 0, no, not 0, I dot get times borrowed is greater than popular. If it is, we need to store it in popular. Then popular gets book our square bracket 0. You could copy and paste this, but anyway, dot get times borrowed bracket brackets. And on the next line, I also want to store the position in the array. The I, oops, the array, no, sorry, not I, 0, it must be I. I want to store I in position, because that's the place in the array where that maximum get times borrowed is. Okay. That is the end of my if. Do note where the end of your if is. Please also, do you see how much I indent? I exaggerate the indentation because you want to be clear. What belongs in your if statement? What belongs inside your for loop? Make sure your indentation is very clear. All right. And then end your for loop there. So, and that's it. I'm going to delete all those blank lines. So we want to say the most popular genre is, and then we want to say plus or and we need to say book our square brackets position, square brackets dot get genre, bracket brackets. And that's what they wanted to, that's what they asked for. You're required to, let's just see. Yeah, well, it says you're required to complete the algorithm. It did have a, it said the return the most popular genre is, didn't describe that you should do that, but I suppose the method is called popular genre. So it makes sense to put plus book array position dot get genre. If you look at the memo, you'll see mine's practically the same. But you see, it tells the marker how to mark you. It says accept valid alternatives. There are a number of possible solutions. Marks allocated accordingly. So here are the marks. You must initialize popular. You must do a loop. You must do an if. You must store popular, store the position, and return the correct value. Reasonable attempt to assign value to popular, give a mark for the return even if incorrect. You see, if I had forgotten to put dot get genre here, I think I'd still get the mark, okay, because that wasn't really described in the question. Okay, then the next question, the trace table. I've put a place here to where I can fill in my trace table. So let's have a look. Okay, let's read it. Another part of the OOP solution has an array that is used to store integer values. There appears to be some duplicate integers in this array, which should not be the case. A programmer has written an algorithm to remove these duplicate values and has coded it, but it's not working correctly. The algorithm he used to code his program has been given to you in Appendix A. The line numbers are for reference only. Assume the array has the following values, and they've given you an array, int array 0 to 6, so 7 cells. And then to help find the problem, the programmer decided to use a trace table. You need to complete this trace table up to and including the step where size becomes 6. Okay, if you did this whole trace table, it would be very long, but they only want you to go up to size becomes 6. That's when the outer loop controlled by variable I has executed once. Okay, so I copied this image into my Word document, and let's go to Appendix A and just put up our, I'm just gonna, I just want to make this a little bigger for you. All right, that's fine. So this is our algorithm. They've also given us the array here. And as you know, when you make a trace table, you're going to go, if you were making it from scratch, but they've actually made it for you. But let's just check. What you would do is, as you go through the algorithm or the program, you would grab each variable. As you come across a variable, you would make it a column in your trace table. So they've already put the step number, which is the first line, or the line number. Okay, and then we've got size. There it is, size. Then we've got I. There it is. That's the I, the for loop counter. Then we've got K. That's a next for loop. And then there's another for loop there, P. Then they've displayed the whole of the int array because we work on it in different places. And also what they've done is they've put this if statement. If int array square brackets I equals int array square brackets K, that too should be okay, sorry, all right? And that's taken from the exam paper. Well, anyway. So if int array square brackets I equals int array square brackets K, that little 2 should be a K. But we'll just work with it. I'm going to just move that up so I've got enough space to write. I'm going to plug in my tablet and let's start. Sorry about all the bleeps. This little thing always bleeps a lot. Okay. So let's just check what they've filled in all these these values. Let's check what's happening. So in step 1, size gets the number of elements in the array, and there are 7. There it is, 7. Then the for loop, I starts counting at 0. There it is, I starts counting at 0. Then we get to the next for loop. It goes from 4K, it gets 1 plus I plus 1. So it starts counting at 0 plus 1. There's the 1. Then we get to the if statement. Now I would have put this column right next, but they put it on the end, so that's where we fill it in. So if int array I equals int array K, and we must look I, let me just scribble a little bit here, in a different color. So I is 0. So we are looking at int array 0. And then we've got K is 1. So we're comparing it with int array K. So we're comparing 1 and 2. They are not equal. Therefore, we fill in an F there. Okay, that's how that works. And we then keep going. And you can see that K, because the if is always false, we don't do that inner part of the loop. Let me just show you over here. We're going to keep skipping all of this then part. We don't do that because this if statement is always false. So therefore the then parts get skipped. Okay. So we're just going to keep incrementing k. Going to go to k equals k plus plus, and so k becomes 2. And if you compare int array 0 with int array 2, it's still not equal. And then you're going to make k equal to, hold on, k will then go equal to 3. You'll be comparing int array 0 with int array 3, and you still get a false. And they've filled that in for us. But if you want to look carefully at how it's done, that is how they've done. So the k loop, let me highlight that for you over here. The k loop, that loop, it counts from 1 to 6. Goes up to size. Size is 7, so it just goes to less than size, up to 6. Right? And all the way the cells are not equal, so it keeps being f. That means that we finished the going through the k loop, and then we will go to the outer loop for I gets 0 to size minus 1. So I goes to I plus 1. That's where we're, let me just highlight that for you. We're over here. I becomes 1. And we're going to go all the way through for k gets I plus 1 to less than size, and do all of that, right? Because it keeps gonna, I think it, actually no, it's going to be positive. Let's just have a look. All right, let me clear my drawings. So I'm going to start writing in this trace table. So we've got I equal to 1. Now we're going to have 4k equals I plus 1. So k becomes 2. And then we're going to compare if int array I equals int array k. Int array I is 1, so it's that one. And int array k is this one. Aha, they are equal. At last we get a true. So now we're on line 4, step 4. I'm going to fill in a true there. Okay, the step. We now go to step 5, and we can start our P for loop. So 4P gets K to size minus 1. Size minus 1 is 6, so the K is actually going to stop at, well, let's just write a little 6 here so we can remember. It must only go up to 5. K is going to only go up to 5. So in this line 5, I'm going to fill in 4P gets K. This is the K column, the P column, sorry. It gets a 2 because it's equal to K. Begin. Now we go int r p plus 1 is equal to int r p. So p plus 1 is over here. This is where we need to fill in, and it's going to get int r p. So if you go back, look at the latest value for int r p. P is 2. We get a 2. All right. So I'm going to, oops, I deleted a bit too much. I'm going to fill in a 2 over here. Just be careful where you fill it in. All right. We keep going carefully with all these columns. Is that right? Int array p plus 1 is int array 3, and I must set it equal to int array 2, which contains a 2. Then my, sorry, and that line should not be there actually. So this should be here. Okay. So now go to step 5, back to the P loop, and the loop goes from P, goes P plus plus, and we're going to say int array P plus 1 equals int array P. So we now have the latest value for int array 3 is not the 4, it's the 2. So be careful. First time I did this, I filled in a 4 there, which was wrong. So that 2 moves up to into array 4 as well. Then P counts to 4, and into array 5 gets the 2, and then the loop goes to 5. That's step 5. And into array P plus 1 is into array 6, and it also gets the 2. That's in line 6. And then the loop must end because P is less than 6. So the loop ends and size becomes size minus 1. And that is on line step 7. Let's see, size is this column. So size goes from 7 to 6. And that is precisely where they said we could stop doing this trace table. So that's fine. And that's it. If you want to check me, let's go and look at this trace table. See, we've got the 2. That's this 2. Then the true. Then the 2 there, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got 2, 3, 4, 5. And the 2 carries through all the way in the array, and then the 6 there. And that is how you got your 10 marks. But you have to work very carefully. Rather work very slowly. Do this in pencil first. Check yourself again. And then when you're really happy you've made no mistakes, then fill it in pen if you want to. Okay. Thanks for watching today, and I hope that you can go over this again and do really well in this section of the exam. Bye.